So there's a heat wave on the go. Also, Gauteng residents battling low or no water due to reservoirs running critically low. But this evening, we've also heard that at least 2 hospitals in Gauteng are feeling the effects as well. Gauteng Health Department says the Helen Joseph and Rahima Moosa hospitals are really struggling. Even though both have boreholes, it's just not enough. I'm joined now by department spokesperson Motalatale Modiba. Mr. Modiba, thank you so much for your time. Could you talk to me about how the water supply problem is affecting the running of these 2 hospitals in particular?
Well, Sally, you know that hospitals, by their nature, are an environment which is clinical in nature, and therefore provision of clean running water is quite critical for any health facility. And when you've got a supply challenge, what it does is that it affects some of the operations that you need to do at the hospital. And obviously, it will affect patients and even staff, as they would probably not have access to ablution facilities and other amenities within the facility that depend on water supply. So in this instance, the 2 facilities that you have mentioned have, of course, been impacted by challenges that Joburg Water communicated earlier in the day. I think as early as last week, they communicated that they have had challenges on their network. And unfortunately, those challenges happen to be affecting the 2 facilities in particular. The Joburg Water has come on board in terms of providing water tankers into the facilities. What they've done today is that they've also increased the frequency within which they supply the facility with those. But we're finding that even with those measures, unfortunately, those are intervention measures. It's not the same as when the facility has got full water supply. So we're having to contend with that. And I think it has obviously put a bit of a strain on healthcare workers as they grapple with how best to manage the situation, especially given that you're dealing with people's lives. And obviously, when people come to hospitals, we want to make their stay there as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's water tankers on site, borehole water, but in your statement you said it's just not enough coming through the borehole. So at this point, are surgeries still able to go ahead at these 2 hospitals, Helen Joseph and Rahima Moosa? Can you still admit patients?
Yes, we are still admitting patients, but of course, we've got our clinical managers at both facilities who are assessing the situation, obviously, on an hourly basis, just to make sure that as it concerns your procedures that needs to take place at the facility, that the utmost care is taken. And I think where they're able to reprioritize some of the procedure that needs to take place, they're able to do that. And I think they're also liaising with the cluster network to ensure that where there is a need to also look at capacity within other facilities that are nearby, they're able to also do that. But that is something that is actually informed by the clinical managers, because whenever patients' care is concerned, clinicians must lead in terms of advising and informing on what must actually happen.
So we know that Rahima Moosa is in Coronationville and the Helen Joseph Hospital's just a couple of kilometres away. So I'm imagining that they are probably both serviced by the Hurst Hill Reservoir. Is that why they're both in the same boat? Or do you have water supply concerns in other areas, other hospitals as well?
At the moment, it looks like you're quite right. The 2 facilities are not far from each other. And if you look at even the notice that Joburg Water issued earlier on, it did highlight that the areas that are surrounding the 2 facilities are indeed affected. What Joburg Water was able to do earlier was that they were able to, I think, isolate 2 towers to try and alleviate the situation there in the 2 facilities. So far, up to now, we have not received complaints or concerns from other facilities across the province. But of course, given that today earlier I saw that the city of Tshwane also issued a warning urging residents to use water sparingly. That obviously means that we need to be on high alert even in facilities in Swan and maybe in other municipalities as well. You've just mentioned the issue around the heat wave and the impact that it has on how people utilize water. And I suppose that part of the solutions that we also need to look into is to continuously urge the public to use water sparingly and to be mindful, especially during this particular period where we're experiencing all of these heat waves and other challenges that are also contributing to the problem that we have. But so far, we have not received complaints from other facilities in terms of them being affected. We will see tomorrow as we continue to monitor the situation.
What is your understanding of the reason we're battling with water? And I ask that because our dams, Vaal Dam, for example, is 95% full. Why are our reservoirs running dry? Surely it's not all water consumption of residents. Is it? Do we blame load shedding? What is your understanding of why we're in such a mess?
Well, Sally, I don't know whether I'm qualified to even try to stop.
What have you been told, I suppose? Yeah,
but,
I just want to know what you've been told. I understand, yeah.
With Joburg Water in particular, in this, we know that they have experienced challenges on their network, and there's there are multiple factors, given that Joburg Water itself relies on rainwater to be able to supply them with water. So if there is a problem on rainwater side, it will automatically affect Joburg Water, which then also spills over to those of us who are at the receiving end as clients of Joburg Water. So I suppose that it's a host of challenges. Sometimes it's issues of maintenance. I know that from time to time, these water utilities, they carry out maintenance, but they're able to give us notices to say, for this many days, we will be carrying out this type of maintenance and so forth. So I suppose it's a host of factors. Of course, we can't rule out of the challenges that we're currently experiencing of load shedding in terms of the impact that it has as well on the water supply network, because electricity becomes critical in terms of being able to pump the water into the system and for the water to have the right pressure. So from where we're sitting, I think it's a host of factors that are contributing towards this situation. But what we are getting is an assurance, of course, from the powers that be, especially those that are running the utilities, that they are doing everything possible to ensure that they mitigate the situation and to also prioritize healthcare facilities.
So we know, speaking of healthcare facilities, that there's this big push now to exclude healthcare facilities from load shedding. We've just moved up to stage 4. That kicked in at 6 o'clock this evening. I know that Rahima Musa and Helen Joseph are among the hospitals that have already been isolated. But generally speaking, Gauteng hospitals, how concerned are you this evening for those that have not yet been excluded? What is the picture?
Look, at the moment, of course, since the minister's address last week, Friday, there's been quite a lot of movement. We've got a number of facilities. You're quite right. Helen Joseph, Steve Biko, George Mukari, Pretoria West, Kalafong, Charlotte Matlaike, it's quite a number of them that now either already exempted or the process of them being exempted is actually being finalized. But we've got, about 38 facilities, hospitals within the Gauteng province, and we've got also on top of that your community health centers, which operate 24 hours. And while for now I think it's a start in terms of getting these facilities exempted, where the ideal situation would be to have all healthcare facilities exempted, and we think that it will go a long way in assisting to address some of the challenges that we are currently seeing, because you know that sometimes a decision of whether an operation at the theater will go ahead or not, sometimes it depends on whether will there be power supply during that period, because the last thing you want, even if you've got a generator, is to have power supply interruption at the moment when you're starting with your operation, and by the time the generator kicks in, those few seconds they count a lot. So you would rather not have any supply interruption at all. And I think there's a host of other options that are being looked at, issues of solar power to say to what extent can we actually tap into that and ensure that some of our facilities actually also begin to move in that direction. I know that in Gauteng, there's already a process to ensure that at least at the initial phase, about 10 hospitals also get to participate in what is called the solar rooftop project that will then see solar being installed in those particular facilities. But at the end of the day, you need a mixture of interventions that will work collaboratively to ensure that we sustain power supply at our facilities, given that these are national key points. They provide a critical service, and you would want them to be able to operate throughout, given the nature of the service that we provide.
All right, thank you so much for giving us such a comprehensive update. Gauteng Health Department spokesperson Motalatale Modiba telling us that their pressing concerns at the moment are 2 hospitals in the same vicinity linked to the same reservoir, that's Hurst Hill, Helen Joseph Hospital and Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital, that's in Coronationville, and they have the water tankers on site. It's not an ideal situation. At the moment, they're struggling along, but they're really hoping that things get better soon. The rest of the province's hospitals, when it comes to water supply, are doing okay for now, but they are continually assessing. Gauteng Health Department pleased that at least 10 Gauteng hospitals are off the load shedding list, but there's more that they have to do, particularly as we move to stage 4 this evening.